Disinformation knows no borders, and today the stakes seem higher than ever. Welcome to Truth Talks, a brave new podcast series tackling the challenges of fake news and propaganda head-on. Join us for engaging short conversations with experts from all EU member states and Ukraine as we uncover the truth behind dominant disinformation trends and explore the strategies shaping Europe's fight against manipulation. In this episode, we are zooming in on Portugal. Today's guest is Filipe Pardal, Chief Operation Officer at Polígrafo, a Portugal-based fact-checking group, and a board member of the European Fact-Checking Standards Network. Welcome to Truth Talks.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me today.
Our pleasure. With its deep-rooted media landscape and high-level digital engagement, Portugal faces distinct challenges in the fight against disinformation. What are the dominant disinformation narratives circulating in Portugal?
Disinformation in Portugal has been closely tied to both political and social issues. One of the major trends in recent years has been the weaponization of disinformation during election periods, of course. And I often say that nothing reaches or happens in Portugal firsthand, but eventually everything ends up here. The issue with disinformation is that when it arrives, it's more refined. And here I'm talking about disinformation that can be political or the typical scams we find online and on social platforms. This year in Portugal, and I think that's useful to say, the political situation has become in the recent days very unstable with no prior signs. Although it wasn't been officially confirmed at the time that we are having this conversation, we will most likely have early elections in May, followed by local elections in September and presidential elections in January 26. So there are many risks of disinformation in a year that will be even more challenging than initially expected. But if I have to say in terms of key narratives, disinformation in Portugal has taken root within the broader European context, influenced by the rise of populist movements across the continent, of course, furthering polarizing political debates in the country. For example, we have seen the rise of disinformation concerning the European Union handling on the refugee crisis. For example, with false claims about the number of migrants entering Portugal, perpetuating sometimes xenophobia and anti-immigrant sentiment. And this includes false claims such as the alleged financial support of Portugal government to Brazilian citizens to start business here in Portugal, and anti-immigration narratives like the one suggesting that migration increases crime in Portugal. Just to quote an important study of Iberifier, that is the Iberian hub of EDMO, Portugal and Spain, of which Polígrafo takes part. That study revealed that Portugal significantly differs from the broader European trend of multi-thematic disinformation. About that, in Portugal, immigration is the only topic that widespread disinformative content online. Whatever, as observed during the last elections, those disinformation cases usually need amplification by political actors to spread widely on social media. Other common narrative puts Portugal as one of the most corrupt countries in the world. It's common for false allegations to appear on Facebook and in WhatsApp, mostly, with positions of the country in corruption perception rankings. For example, a fact-checked Facebook post rated Portugal as the 33rd most corrupt country in the world, blaming politicians, of course, and calling the country a tax haven. Whatever, our conclusions revealed that Portugal was, in the time, the 33rd least corrupt country in the world, and not the opposite. And just to finish, and a part of political issues, we see, of course, as the COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of misinformation and disinformation And just to finish, and a part of political issues, we see, of course, since the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of health misinformation and conspiracy theories about vaccines, and a lot of scams that use the image of public figures like journalists or even doctors. Just to give you a particularized example of this, a viral AI-generated video falsely claimed that a well-known Portuguese doctor had discovered a cure for diabetes. And the video was very, very poorly made, I must say, and featuring both Portuguese and Brazilian Portuguese in the video. Included a call to action for a scam product as well. And some patients traveled to Lisbon seeking the treatment. So this shows the potential dangers of the AI generated information, especially as the technology improves. So yeah, I think that resumes the landscape in Portugal.
Okay, just to fact check, I mean to verify if I heard well and understood well. So, did you mention that according to EDMO, Spain and Portugal, the disinformation in Portugal is entirely focused on the refugees and immigration?
Not entirely, but with the strategic.
Although you mentioned later further topics, but it stood in
East
some kind of
contest,
an opposition
No,
with that what you started with, that is this focus on immigration and refugees.
yeah, it's more focused on that, absolutely. And what we see is that the other topics is just we see one topic here and topic there, nothing organized. But the anti-narratives, anti-immigrant immigration narratives, it's well organized, and it's like all year we see that narratives going on in Portugal. So in that sense, is the only major theme that we observed in Portugal.
In the very beginning, you also mentioned the weaponization of disinformation, especially as part of political campaigns. So, can you say a little bit more about it?
When the polarization in Portuguese Parliament, like a lot of European countries has seen as well, we start to see more use of false allegations to capitalize the vote of people. And that disinformation commonly shared one thing in common, that is fear. Just to give you an example, the leader of the most right-wing party in the Portuguese Parliament, often described as far right, makes some relationship between immigration and the rise in crime. So regarding immigrants in the Portuguese city called Braga, the party leader claimed that the immigrants were already 30% of the population, and we have a substitution in place and whatever. This is a false figure. The actual percentage were 3.3, so a lot distant. And on the other hand, that same political leader, just to give you another example, and this was in political campaign, claimed that many sexual crimes, rapes, are committed by immigrants, but the official numbers contradict this claim. According to data from our Director General of Reintegration and Prison Service, 80% of the prisoners convicted of rape were in fact Portuguese in 2023. And additionally, rape crimes actually fell by 4% in 2023 compared to the previous year. So it's just two examples where one political leader in this case, but it is the same with other issues, use false allegations to capitalize the vote for their voters.
You also mentioned the EU targeting disinformation in Portugal. I would like to ask you how it is influenced by the fact that Antonio Costa, so the Portuguese politician, has become the head of the European Council.
We didn't see a lot of disinformation about that. Just a lot of polemic about it, because the government of Antonio Costa failed before the nomination. So because he was investigating by a issue. It's not corruption. I don't know how to say it properly in English, but it was in the investigate case in Portugal where they find a lot of money in the chief of staff cabinet. So a lot of polemic about that, but not a lot of disinformation.
Do you see any fake news narrative that is the most widespread today, like nowadays, currently in Portugal?
Let me think about it. The most widespread fake news in Portugal. We at Polígrafo, we have the habit of selecting the national and international lie of the year in the end of each year. So, which are basically the major and most impactful narratives or fake news shared. And last year in Portugal, we chose the statement made by André Ventura because he's actually the anti-immigration falsehoods that we are seeing every day. And particularly in Portugal, just to give you another hot topic, is the housing crisis. You know, the prices of the houses, but even the housing crisis is commonly linked with the increase of immigrants. So yeah, we are seeing a lot of disinformation in that sense.
Now, I would like to ask you about the major actors that are behind creation and or spreading disinformation in Portugal. Of course, you already provided partial answer, but if you could focus on the actors now.
So about that, I have a important study to share with you. Researchers from Media Lab at ISCTE, it is a Portuguese a lab from a Portuguese university, identified for the first time in 2024, and this is important in particular in Portugal. For the first time, they identified signs of external interference in elections in Portugal, and this was last year. And this involved online ads, one accusing the Socialist Party of corruption, and another one highlighting the austerity measures imposed by the Social Democratic Party during the Troika period, the economic crisis that led Portugal to seek financial bailout. And that was triggered by the global recession in 2008. So these findings illustrate the increasing presence of foreign influence in Portugal's politics. That is something new for our country, and of course, is through digital means, raising concerns about the integrity of democratic process in the future, and in a year that we are going to have 3 elections. And that investigation by ISCTE researchers pointed out to a company named Neco Play LLC, seemingly based in Delaware, involved mainly in online gaming ads. And despite the efforts to locate the company, it was traced to a Las Vegas based registration agent. Further research from that same Media Lab found that that Necoplay name linked to political and disinformation content in Singapore, Romania, and Panama, and also this time in Portugal. So far, the researchers believe that there is no apparent link to any Portugal political force, and that everything points out to external influence, meaning an act of foreign interference during the electoral period. But we don't know actually what was the motivation behind that. But it was a first, so I wanted to share that with you. In terms of internal actors, we have seen a lot of disinformation coming for political parties and party leaders, and I can talk about almost every party leader with different arms, of course. With increased polarization in the parliament, these tools are becoming more frequent, and relatively new phenomenon here is the manipulation of graphics from reputable online newspapers to convey false messages. So that's a new thing in Portugal as well.
Now, I would like to ask you about this specificity, the unique character of disinformation landscape in Portugal.
We are not very unique in that sense, I must say. We are
Yeah,
unique.
you said that no disinformation narrative commence actually in Portugal, but
Yes.
they end there. But they are more, well, there are more worked upon, so they're perfected in a way.
Yes, absolutely. There aren't actually many unique characteristics identified because we observe anti-immigration narratives that blame the phenomenon for the increase in crime, the housing crisis, among other issues. And we
But you
borrow.
are mentioning Brazil, so no other country expert has mentioned Brazil so far. So I think that this brings a touch of uniqueness to Portugal.
Yeah, if I had to select a more specific trait about this, I said that there's some historical revisionism in certain narratives, particularly regarding the Portuguese colonial era and its impact, both negative and positive, in territories like Angola or Mozambique. On one hand, some groups whitewash the crimes and thefts committed by the Portuguese in that time. While on other end, there's a national/imperialistic glorification of that period. So yeah, that's a unique thing.
Okay, I understand. Fascinating. Finally, to be a little bit constructive for the end, what's being done to counter disinformation in Portugal, and what more would you recommend?
Well, in our small newsroom in Polígrafo, what we try to do is to balance the fact-checking process to more and more prebunking articles, because I think prebunking could serve as a vaccine for disinformation and could
I
be.
totally agree, but what do you mean by pre-banking? Is independent, reliable journalism pre-banking?
We are in talks in the European fact-checking study network that congregates a lot of organizations in fact-checking all over Europe. We are talking more and more about a concrete definition for pre-banking. And we are trying to reach that prebunking is something that we can anticipate that is going to happen. Just give you a practical example. We are going to have new elections in Portugal, and we already know that some political leaders are going to start saying that the election is rigged, and the ballots that are blanked, maybe they are afterwards manipulated by someone. We are already seeing that before. So instead of trying to fact check that when that thing happens, we can try to debunk that narratives before. So that's pre-banking for me. Media literacy for me is another thing and another necessary thing, but it's different in concept. And I think that is probably the way to do a little bit more.
Okay, so in terms of media literacy, you would recommend doing something more, but it would be on the side of the government to take more action, or whom would you expect to act?
Of course, the government has that responsibility in a way, in the educational, of course, absolutely. In reaching out to younger people and to ensure that they have access to information and good information. They are, of course, responsible for that. And the private sector as well. But I think it's a balance between the two. Governments, of course, European institutions, of course, because with the recent news, we already know that we can't count on tech platforms anymore to do that. So we have to have some regulations in that sense. So yeah, institutions, governments, and private sector all together.
Okay, thank you so much. That brings us to the end of our conversation about the Portuguese disinformation landscape. Filipe, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Truth Talk series is part of the project Guardians of Truth, fact-checking during Poland's EU presidency, which is supported by European Media and Information Fund, managed by Calouste Gulbenkian Foundation.